Okay, now we have this. Now I'm going to heat this up and cut it off. I'm going to still leave a little nub on here because that's really nice to be able to use that for when I'm adhering it to the centerpiece. You can feel whether you can do anything with it or not. See, out here, it's nice and soft. So you can go ahead and cut some of this off if you want, depending on what you do. You may be making a flower with this. Abstract flower, big petals coming out. I need all this to put the petals onto. Or whatever else you're adhering with. So I'm going to cut this off fairly short. Because what I'm thinking of doing is I'm going to put it somewhere on those rings. My grandmother would ask me at this point, are you pleasantly bored? Are you pleasantly bored? Because a lot of this is just, I try to keep up with banter. Okay, so that's cooling off. Okay, let's make an apple. I'm going to make a small apple. So you can see how you can manipulate the shape of it. And then we're getting into, I'm going to put in some, let me see. So we're going to make a bird here. And this may be helpful for you when you're making your flamingo. I have some ideas about your flamingo that we're going to. And I don't have any green, so I don't have a making stem, but I'm going to make a stem out of red. So you'll see the apple. And actually you can make a pear from this position. By either pulling on this part of the ball or actually extending this out. Okay, so either way, I've seen it done all different ways. If it gets stuck, it's a little bit slippery or sticky, just quickly move it, okay? And okay, so then we'll make an apple, and then we'll quickly make a pear. So you can see how the progression is from a round to pulling out a neck for a pear or a bird. And after a little while, you'll get a feel of it. What the heat is. How soft the sugar is or how hard the sugar is. Or if it is cold as possible. I say cold, it's still over 100 degrees. Again, cut all the way around into it like this. Indent, pull your thumb, pull the sugar up with your thumb around. Heat up the end of your blowpipe. Inside just a little bit, so there's seal it out, so you've got to already have a cavity. Essentially, you've already done a little puff of air at the last part you're doing. And now you've got a little cavity. Add some air, a little bit at a time. At this point, you can start to pull this up. Towards the end, so I can cool that off. I'll make the pear first. I haven't touched this at all, so watch what happens to the bottom. The bottom will come out. A little more on this to pull it off. And it'll plump up the bottom. Take my other scissors that I cut and open up and make the dimple in there. So that would be where this thing would go. It's a little wash hair or something. It's a little dimple right here too. And then I can actually roll this out without doing anything else. And I got a pair. Little tiny thing. So you can see how I do that with the apple. I'll do that still with the always test. Don't just take your scissors and cram it down there because it will break it. Like that, but that's okay. A little nub at the end so we can add that to the, use it for adhering pieces. Okay, one. And we're going to heat this stuff up and we're going to make the bird. And then we can start putting this piece together. I kind of like the bread dough technique. You still get the same thing done. It cools it off by sitting on the table. Not as much heat sink as the marble would, but at least it gives you a little more time to work with it. So think about that. Hear the snap, that's what we want to hear. Easy going around. Actually pop the bubble there. This is the part people get a little confused about. I'm pushing my right index in, but really pulling the sugar with my thumb up around. Try not to touch the end of the ball. Get it good and secure. That's in there. Same thing every single time. Okay? Don't pinch that off. And as you work with this a little cooler, you could actually be a little more aggressive with the air. Okay, again, a little dimple for the top of the apple, and it's done. Okay, finish your apple, and you can again slowly pinch this off. You should go do an outing and go down to the glass blowers around here and watch them work, and you'll see, oh, that's the same as I do with sugar. I could do that. Yeah, glass blowing to me would be dangerous to me. Not only that the glass is much, much hotter, but I think I would get into it much more than I really want to spend time. I'm doing other things that are really taking up a lot of my time anyway. So, now we've got an apple. You can flatten out some edges. You make it into a red delicious apple. You could do this in yellow, and then take some green mixed liquid color with a fan brush. Hit it on the very edge like that, and you get those little striations, those stippling on there. You can take an airbrush that airbrushes. Some of those airbrushes you can get a lot of air into it. It pokes out little dots on it, so it kind of gives that fleck to it. You can take a brush with paint on it, or food color, like that, it sprays it out. So there's lots of things you can do there. And let's get this off. I'm impatient. I want to get this thing on. So this gives you something to work with here to get this off of here. And I have to I tried using the wooden type blowpipes, and I ended up getting more wood chips in the sugar than need to. Okay, so now we've got some pieces we can sit on there. So we had a few more years, we can do a braided basket or something like that. Let's heat this up. I have another tool. I took one of the bigger tube, soldered on another coupling on here so I can roll this with bigger pieces too. So that's helpful. Now these need to be Any questions? Before we go home tonight?
Is there a sill pad in the microwave right now, or is that just
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Little baby.
Oh.
Actually, there's some other small ones over there that cut up. I'm notorious for cutting sill pads up. So many applications that never had the opportunity before. Oh no, I can cut these things up. There's nothing going to stick to them. Now I just cut up a $25, $26 sill pad up. So, yeah, all for good science. I'm not going to use quite all of this, but most of it. See, I have this piece here that's going to be, that's all, at least 10 inches tall. So I kind of like to have a bird that's going to be somewhere around 10 inches tall with the beak on it at least. Because what you want to think about with your centerpieces is that you have this theme, and you should be able to look at your centerpiece and go, that's what it is. It's a barn. It's a farm scene. It's a farm theme, whatever. You should be able to take a look at it and go, boom, that's what it is. If you have to sit there and contemplate for a little while, like at the art gallery, what's he trying to do? These things is different. You want to have it right there in front of you. Another story from Jackie Pfeiffer is he was judging a pastry competition with centerpieces, and came up to this one table, and all the chefs were there so they could get this kind of instant critique. And he looked at this piece, and couldn't figure out what it was, and the man told him, you need to look at this little red dot in the middle of the centerpiece and keep on looking at it, and you will see what comes of it. He just walked away. So, if I don't see it, well, you know, what's the sense? Why did you go through all this stuff to mess around with this, and I can't really see what's going on? So make it blatant, and that is the theme part is your centerpiece. That's what you should be focusing on. The rest of it, the periphery, is colors, some shapes and things like that. But if you got this flamingo, that's it. That's your. We know it's a flamingo, okay? I always like to have it kind of sitting right out in front of you. I do some abstract stuff, and I have to be kind of careful that people are not going to see it. But then I start looking at it, and that's why I let it sit there for a while, come back to it. Does it really look like what it's supposed to, what I'm intending? Am I giving that off to someone? All right, let's, this is kind of taking up this much.
So get a sense of the piece that he's trying to work right now, what's going to come about of it. The other thing is,
if you're trying to figure out how much sugar, this is kind of neat, I've learned this from one of my students, how to figure out how much sugar I need to cast this out. Well, what have we done to that cast sugar? Hmm?
Poured it flat.
I know, but we cooked it, right? We cooked a lot of water out of it, right? So isn't it nearly back to sugar again? So what we would do, we would figure out what we needed, got all the noodles, whatever, molds and everything, lined it with plastic and poured sugar into it. Took it out, weighed it, and go, oh, let's compare it to this recipe. Oh, I need 40 ounces. I'm going to make 1.5 times or something like that, so I'll have enough. So you get an idea. And I thought, genius. And you know, like I said, I think I was telling you yesterday about, I would always tell my students, I'm going to learn something from you, and they would go, I don't know it all. If I knew it all, I'd be sitting in the office with a big cigar.
Yeah.
So, but you know, it's really interesting, and it made a whole lot of sense. I thought, yeah, that's good. Still, even with a big one, I like to get this little guy off of there. They need that. And again, I'm going to push this in a little bit more. This is pretty warm, so still don't touch the end of it.
Is that on or?
Yeah, off the juice. I know. Good enough. So this one's a little bit more sugar. And so what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to cool this bottom part off a fair amount. Add a little air, you know. To cool this bottom part because I don't want that to blow out so much. Let it out. So I'm acting as a heat sink. Okay. Even chefs with these cool ones.
Mm.
Is it working? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, at this point, now this is still pretty warm up here. I'm going to have my hand over here holding the sugar back and then pulling this up and out without touching the bottom too much and not touching the top hardly at all at this point because I still want to make a beak on this guy. With this lady out. So now getting this neck, add a little air to it, blow out the body a little bit. Now that it's cooler, I can really kind of push down on it. And now I'm going to pull this out. You still following me? Okay, let's go ahead and put the beak in. We're going to pinch on the side and pinch on the top. Now I've already got the eye. See? Two things in one move, or 2 moves. The eye and now this is getting a little, I don't want this to get too thin, so I'm going to pull some of that heat out of it. And get some more air into it. So this is an abstract bird, okay? We're not going anatomical here. Other than this head, it's giving us an idea. And this gives us our height. Now I'm going to cool it off a little bit so I can get this head so it doesn't fall too far. But I also want to get this bird with a little bit of character to it, that it's not just sitting there. Make it look like it's looking back to see whether it's little babies are back there or something. I don't know. But you have a lot of time here, because this is a lot of sugar, and it's a lot of heat, and now it's starting to cool off. So now I can keep this, kind of keep touching it, maneuvering it, making sure it's not deflating. So once in a while, a little puff, but don't go overboard at this point, because this is starting to get much cooler. So now we can bring this down and a little curve to it. I'm not putting wings on this. I like to think about that you got the idea that it's a bird already. I don't have to put wings on it. Look up this artist. His last name is Constantine Brancusi. He has a sculpture that I saw when I was 10 years old down in New York City, up in New York City, at the Guggenheim Museum, and it's a bird, but it looks like a feather. But there's hardly anything else to it. But you can see, once you look at it, there's a whole bird there, because the top of it has this little flat thing going across the top. But you don't see it until you kind of turn around, and you go, oh, that's a bird. But then when you look at the rest of it, it looks like a feather. So it gives you both things right away. And that's what, you get inspiration from different people and different artists. And that to me was, at 10 years old, I never thought I would be that inspired by something like that. But ever since then, it's always been trying to make things simple. That's just my style. You have your own, but I gave you the feeling that you know that this is a bird without too much trouble. And with an eye kind of looking at you. So this might take a little bit to cool off, but now we've got all the pieces to be able to put this together. And that procedure now is going to be taking this base, setting it up onto the cardboard, and it'll probably stick there forever. But you could put it on a silk hat if you want to, if you need to move it. And then if you see something here on these teardrop pieces, what is the bottom of it? This is the top, the points are the top. What about the bottom? What does that look like to you? And it's round, huh? Okay, if I were to put that onto that base, what do you think? Would it hold? Okay, so I'm going to make a flat place on the very edge of that. I'm going to heat that up with the torch a little bit, and then put it down on the silk pad and actually scrape it across the silk pad a couple times to get that flat piece to it. And that way, then I will have
more
a good place
surface
to,
contact.
yeah.
More surface contact.
So that'll help you shape like this again?
No, just the very bottom of it, just have a little flat place. Okay? And then I'll put one on here, and then on that side of this one, because this one's going to stick against it. It was one of the criteria that I did with, I don't chef to do it with all you. I would pick up the pieces to make sure that they were going to hold up. And that was the test. If you couldn't pick it up and it broke, we would start looking at where it broke. I had a piece, big chocolate and sugar centerpiece break in New York City at a competition, and I was too daring. I was making a kite-themed centerpiece, and I had kites that actually moved. Dumb. I set it all up, and then I came back about 45 minutes later before they told us to leave, and half of the sculpture had fallen apart. But the pieces that came down were from up above, and they were light pastillage pieces that sheared down through a bunch of other pastillage pieces and some of the chocolate. The reaction you're asking what I did with that thing that went flying at the wedding, I looked at it and went, look, it held up right there. There was integrity right there. It was an angle of chocolate that I had too far this way, and so it wasn't supported. It was actually hindering and making like a hinge. It fell apart. After that was over, they one of the judges came down to me and I said, he says, how you doing? And I said, well, good. And I said, well, I didn't win. He says, no, but you were here. And that was really important because it was a juried competition. You were invited to come, and I thought, this is pretty cool. And I learned a lot. Logistically and everything, I brought everything up in that competition to redo the whole centerpiece if I had to, and nothing broke. None of the pastiers, none of it broke. And so it was all, I learned a lot about logistics and how things move and how things work. But then I broke the piece, but it was like, it was still a positive thing. So if things break, that's okay. I had a student one time, she was finishing up putting her piece together, and all of a sudden it dropped on the table. She lifted it up a quarter inch, set it down, shattered and broke. I guess the message got through to her because she stopped, looked at all the pieces, pulled them all back together again, and made this abstract sculpture out of it, which was better than what she started out with. So, you never know how things are going to work out. So now we've got that. Let's get into this, putting this together. Do you need another little break here? Because I still want to really quickly go over the pieces too. No, I don't want to see you. Okay. So now, when we take this apart,
No problem, James.
get a little shot glass out here.
Oh.
Two things. So you can see it has a little base to it. Sorry about that.
So you would have just let that cool a little bit as it's rolling? Or?
Yeah. So I just poured it in there and then let me get it away. Okay, when you take these pieces off, it's best the other thing, if you use this vinyl, do not put it directly onto the marble. It will stick. It will melt the vinyl to the marble and you will have a tough time. So bring it over to the edge and just peel it away underneath it. Smooth. And touch the edges, don't touch the top surface. So this is the heartbreaking part. I'm going to do it a couple of different ways. If you could hold that, I don't want this thing to go flying off the edge. Okay, you got it? Might have to roll it a little bit. Thank you. Perfect.
You can make those ahead of time and storm.
Is there anything to be worried about storing them, or is it just keep them?
Just don't have anything touching them and put desiccants in it and have the container sealed up. See how I sealed this one? A few layers of plastic wrap. And then you can cover the whole thing again too. I'm real paranoid about sugar because it wants to suck up moisture, and unless you're working in and this room is pretty good today. I went to the expense, it's not very expensive, I think I paid $20 for it. It was a little hygrometer, and it tells me what the humidity is in the room. So if it's less than 50%, you're good, okay? 20 is great, but you're not going to run into that very often, unless you have a real control place. Okay, so we got that. We're going to use this.
Remove all demons.
The other thing is that if you're making something like this, use the piece that you have as a template to put your molds around it, your silicone molds or something like that. So then you're doing exactly what you started to plan out to do, okay? And that's really important. So this has been room temperature. This is okay, but I'm still going to be careful about, this is going to be maybe a little off. It's not going to be straight up. It's going to be a little bit like this. You always want to give motion to whatever piece you're working on. So I'm adding a little heat just to a little bit at a time. Don't sit there and right on it. You're going to have some problems. So I want to get a little bit soft. Set it down at an angle. Pull it back a little bit. Okay? Makes me nervous. That little edge, flip it off. You can use this. You can use this. Again, it's little angles, swipe. And this way, we keep any of the stuff we don't want to see towards the back, for the most part. Plus, this is going to get covered up, so I'm going to trim there. Be careful when you're doing this, because this is you're liking a lever here. You could break this pretty easily, so I think that would be good enough for this. The first thing, chefs invited me to help judge. I imagine I'll be put on the sugar pieces.
Absolutely.
The things I will look for is how they're adhered, what your edges look like. Is it integral? Does it look like it's going to hold together? I'm not going to pick them up.
I would love to.